Hi, this is James with Exploring Americana. I'm here at the Battle of Island Mound State Park in Missouri. And it is a beautiful morning here. It's a little bit of the battlefield. And we'll see what this says over here. Now, not too familiar with this battle, so we're going to learn about this together. So, the Battle of Island Mound. This is here on October 29th, 1862, was the first crucible to test the mettle of formerly enslaved black men during the Civil War. Here, a group of volunteers faced battle with the certainty of only two outcomes, victory or death, for there would be no quarter given to a black man who had taken up arms. Here in uniforms issued on behalf of a country that had not yet emancipated them, they revealed courage and tenacity under fire. Here, the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry defeated a force of rebellious to the federal government, laying to rest doubts that former slaves could perform as soldiers. Here, the bravery and determination helped our nation better understand the Founding Fathers' words, "All men are created equal." Here on October 27th, 2012, we memorialize their victory and the American freedoms they fought for so bravely. Very cool. Let's take a walk around there's a trail that goes around here, and it's like I see one information board on up a little bit further, so just take a little brisk walk and see what else we can learn about this battle. Well, oh. A little bit more information about this area. The Toothman Farm, home to a notorious rebel family. So after the 1854 Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed, pro-slavery Missourians and Free State Kansans fought over whether Kansas should enter the Union as a slave or a free state. The fighting was so intense that the conflict was called Bleeding Kansas. It says in 1861, when the Civil War began, most Bates County, Missouri residents supported the Confederacy because Bates County bordered Kansas. Guerrilla warfare from both states was rampant. Federal authorities considered the Toothman family, who came to Missouri from Virginia, Southern sympathizers. John Toothman, the 23-year-old son of Enoch and Christina Toothman, rode with Bill Turman, a local bushwhacker. These guerrillas often sought refuge on Hog Island, an area formed by the, I'm going to mess this up, Maria de Cygnus River. John Toothman joined in the ambush of a Union foraging party on May 15, 1862, in which 3 Federal soldiers were killed. He was later arrested and confined at Fort Lincoln, Kansas. In October 1862, the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry received orders to march into Bates County and break up the rebellion encampments on Hog Island. Kansas troops took over the Toothman home about 2.5 miles north of Hog Island. They made camp around the house, used the fence rails for fortifications, and dubbed it Fort Africa. Women of the Toothman household were present when the soldiers arrived and were questioned about the presence of guerrillas in the area. The adult males, probably rebel sympathizers, if not outright guerrillas, made themselves scarce during the occupation of their farm. Wow. Some of the history that you just don't know about. And this is pretty much, looks like all farmland around. So quiet, all you hear is the birds chirping. Here's some information about the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry Regiment. Most of the men of the 1st Kansas Volunteer Infantry were escaped slaves. Many fled to Kansas from farms and towns in Missouri or Arkansas to find freedom. Some may have been stolen in Jayhawk raids. Others in the regiment were free men of color who had moved to Kansas in the hope of a better life. All faced prejudice and bigotry from their white neighbors. In Leavenworth, a prominent African-American businessman named William D. Matthews recruited an entire company, approximately 100 men, for the 1st Kansas. Matthews received a commission as captain of Company D. 2 other African-Americans, Henry Copeland and Patrick Minor, were commissioned as lieutenants for Company D. Lieutenant Minor took part in the fighting at Island Mound and gained the distinction of being the first African American officer to serve in combat during the Civil War. It says, in August 1862, Senator Jim Lane was appointed Commissioner of Recruiting for the Union Army in the Department of Kansas. Captains James Williams and Henry Seaman began recruiting African Americans almost immediately. Even though President Lincoln had not authorized recruitment of black soldiers, on August 5th, Lane reported to the Secretary of War that recruiting opens beautifully, and emphasized that he enlisted enough African Americans to form 2 regiments. And here's a picture of Senator Jim Lane. He was an abolitionist who favored using former slaves in military service. His Jayhawkers brought hundreds of liberated African Americans to Kansas from their raids into Missouri and Arkansas. And here, the photo of William Matthews, and he was denied commission in the 1st Kansas because of his race. He went on to serve as a 1st lieutenant in the Independent Colored Battery at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And here's the flag of the 1st Kansas Colored Volunteer Infantry. It was 8 battles, including Island Mound. It says, they fought like tigers. On January 13th, 1863, Less than 2 weeks after the Emancipation Proclamation took effect, the first colored volunteer infantry became the 5th African American regiment to be mustered into federal service 3 months after they had fought and won their first battle. It says on October 29th, 1862, part of the 1st Colored Infantry faced a force of Confederate guerrillas more than double their number at Island Mound in Bates County, Missouri. They were the first African American regiment to come under fire in the Civil War. It was widely believed by white Americans that escaped slaves would not have the courage to engage in deadly combat with their former masters. The men of the 1st Kansas fought so valiantly that Eastern newspapers reported the battle. Even their enemy praised them. Guerrilla leader Bill Turman reportedly said they fought like tigers. Throughout the Civil War, black soldiers knew they would be killed or returned to slavery if captured. At the Battle of Poison Springs, Arkansas on April 18, 1864, Confederates violated the rules of war by executing captured and wounded black soldiers. In the West, "Remember Poison Springs" was a battle cry of black regiments for the remainder of the war. And here is a list of the battles that the 1st fought in. Recruitment. So, recruitment of the 1st Kansas Infantry began in August 1862. They fought in the Battle of Island Mound in Bates County, Missouri on October 29th, 1862. They were mustered into federal service on January 13th, 1863. And so on. Really glad that I found this battle site and learned so much about this regiment.